Steam Deck is back on top. It's back to being the #1 seller, but there's some other interesting data that really shows the impact that the Steam Deck is having right now, and it's pretty surprising. But leaks concerning the Nintendo Switch 2 have really begun to heat up, and the weird thing is, the information we know so far is actually pretty credible. Well, some of it, but I'll get to that. The interesting thing from my perspective is what impact a Switch 2 will have on the Steam Deck. One thing's for sure, when it does eventually get announced and released, you better get prepared because we're going to start seeing Switch 2 versus Steam Deck headlines all over again. Of course, as we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe if you do enjoy these videos. It certainly helps to spread the word to more people. You rock. Let's get into it. What's good, Deck Gang? Let's get this party started with the rumors of a new Nintendo console. The first thing we saw was a tweet in Spanish that indicated a Switch 2 development kit has arrived in Spain. This was shared by Twitter account Nash Weedle. This is notable because Nash Weedle is known to have previously leaked details about Metroid Dread that ended up being correct. Of course, Metroid Dread was developed by Mercury Steam, which is also located in Spain. This has caused further speculation that Mercury Steam is the studio with the dev kit. Given the history of this Twitter account, I give the credibility of that rumor a real solid 8.5 out of 10. Then there was a Spanish YouTuber named Behind the Games who says he spoke to Nash Weedle, and Nash told him that the studio is using a Pro controller to test their games because Nintendo is trying to keep their controller a secret. I was ready to give this rumor a 6 out of 10 because I hadn't seen Nash confirm this publicly, but I DM'd him myself and he confirmed it. The developers are using the Switch 2 dev kit with a Nintendo Switch Pro controller, presumably because they don't want details of the Switch 2 controller to leak. While Nintendo is known for their wacky controllers, and the fact that they want to keep their controller secret could be reason enough to believe that the Switch 2 controller would be wacky as well, there's another way of looking at this. The Switch 2 will in fact support traditional controls. We know this because they are expecting developers to use the Pro controller for development and testing. Furthermore, the Joy-Cons were interesting enough to keep secret, but they were otherwise completely traditional. It's possible that we'll see the same for the Switch 2. So given my short conversation with Nash himself, I've got to give this rumor a 9 out of 10. Finally, and this one has taken the world by storm, but a screenshot was posted on famiboards.com of the Nintendo Switch 2 actually showing up on the Nintendo developer portal as the NX2. For those that are unfamiliar, the NX was the code name for the Switch back before launch. The thing that's getting everyone excited here is that the original NX actually showed up on the Nintendo developer portal in September 2016, just 1 month before it was announced to the public at the October Nintendo Direct. Still though, there's no source for this image and it could have been easily doctored by using Inspect Element. Unfortunately, anybody that has access to the developer portal would be breaking a tremendous NDA if they confirmed or denied these rumors. Given how easy it would be to fake this, I give this leak a 1 out of 10. Still though, credible sources like NW Player 123 seem to be speculating that a Switch 2 announcement is coming this year, with a launch coming later in Q2 2024. The original Switch went on sale in March and it's clearly been a wild success, so this doesn't seem out of the question. I also agree with NW Player 123 on this. Even though the OG Switch will continue to sell well, they likely plan to continue support for the Switch, but also launch next gen for those of you who are like me and are just looking for more power. So what does this all mean for the Steam Deck? Well, like I said, I think we can definitely expect to see a whole lot of Steam Deck versus Switch 2 think pieces. So that leads me to a question for all of you. Do you actually think these two things would be comparable? Let me know in the comments. Personally, I believe these two machines would be two very different beasts, but you can imagine that there are going to be at least some people with $400 to spend who are going to find themselves trying to decide which handheld is the right way to go for them. I think the interesting thing is that the graphical capabilities between the two devices may end up being pretty similar, but a Switch 2 would likely be using an ARM-based APU just like its predecessor, and you know what that means? Much better battery life. That's going to be a big W for Switch 2, and I wonder if that's something that Valve would react to. By March 2024, the Steam Deck would only be 2 years old, and that would be way ahead of Valve's timeline for a new Steam Deck, so I personally suspect not. Still though, I am very excited for a new Switch. I love Nintendo games as it is, and despite my many criticisms, I'm always looking forward to whatever they're doing next. Where do you stand? And with that, let's pivot over to Steam Deck news. As you know, the Steam Deck has been on sale during the Steam Summer Sale. It's been 10% off, 15% off, or 20% off for the 64GB, 256GB, and 512 models respectively. As you might imagine, that has helped improve the sales of the Steam Deck by quite a bit. Not only was it sold out in the UK, but as Gaming on Linux has reported, it climbed back up to being the top selling item on Steam. It's actually been a couple of months since Steam Deck was #1 on the top sellers list, but here it is back at pole position. Anecdotally speaking, my Ultimate Starter Guide has been getting more views than usual, and that's always the telltale sign for my channel that Steam Deck sales are up. Still though, I don't actually think that was the most interesting piece of Steam Deck data we got in the past week. What's most notable to me is actually the Steam hardware survey. As you likely know, Steam randomly asks you to take a hardware survey and they publish the results monthly. Month to month there may be an anomaly here and there, but generally speaking it's interesting to look at to find what kind of systems people are working with. The June hardware survey showed that they gained an additional 14% of the total share of Linux, making the Steam Deck account for almost half of all Linux users on Steam. In a little over a year, SteamOS is close to having more Steam users than all other distros combined. To an extent, this makes me wonder if SteamOS may end up being thought of as distinct from Linux the way Android and Chrome OS have done over time. Interestingly, the June hardware survey doesn't take into account Steam Decks that were sold during the Steam Summer Sale, considering the sale started on June 29th and most new buyers wouldn't have received their device until July, so it's possible that these numbers will get a big bump again next month. Or this could just be an anomaly. It's kind of weird that Steam Deck got such a big bump in June. One possible explanation given by my friend CryoBite33 is that it could be related to the end of the school year, either new grads that got Steam Decks as gifts or students that finally have time to fire up some games. Nonetheless, it's fun to examine the numbers and I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like in July. Hey you guys, you want to see a box?
We got a box. We got a box!
I saw you with a box. What was in the box?
So this has got to be the coolest community thing I've seen in a long time. This comes from the user L Allen on Reddit, and he's calling it the Orange Box. Inspired by the game bundle that introduced so many people to Valve, it's got everything you need for 15-inch 1080p multiplayer Steam Deck gaming with 6 to 12 hours battery life. He's got it kitted out with a Steam controller, Xbox controller, AR Zopa 15-inch display, the Shark Geek Storm 2, which is an awesome 100-watt power bank, plus the Redragon K530 mechanical keyboard and glorious gaming Model O mouse. Of course, he's also included an official dock, wall charger, and various cables. While this setup may not be the most practical, it really does look great, and I'd like to build one of my own for fun. If you're interested in seeing more or the parts that Alan is using, I'll leave links to all of that in the description. So I do also have some cool Steam Deck games that recently became compatible, but there has been a lot of PC handheld news recently, starting with the ROG Ally. So Asus released a new BIOS version 3.2.2 and an update to Armoury Crate. The BIOS update comes with a more aggressive fan curve, especially for the fan nearest to the SD card slot. This seems to be targeting the various SD card issues we've seen, but they didn't make that clear in the patch notes. The changes to Armoury Crate include a modified FPS limiter, which removes the 15 FPS option, but adds 90 and 120. It also adds new Alt F4 functionality, which will allow you to more easily close your games. There is also a new potential issue with the ROG Ally where the Windows Update is breaking GPU drivers. I saw this first in a PSA from the unofficial Twitter account Asus ROG Ally Gaming. He shared that because there are no official GPU drivers for the chip running the Ally, that Windows will believe your driver is out of date and update it with a generic driver instead. He provides steps for avoiding that problem, and I'll link to that in the description. If you don't want to deal with Windows on the Ally at all, well, Chimera OS just released version 42, which adds support for the ROG Ally. This includes audio support, functional Wi-Fi, face buttons, and Bluetooth. TDP control is still in an experimental state. Overall support for the Ally is still in an early state, but I'm glad to see the progress. In my latest news roundup, I mentioned 3 new handhelds announced, and today I think we have at least 2 new handhelds. The first is the iNeo Kun. This is a big boy with an 8.5-inch display and a 75 watt-hour battery. The Kun actually has circular trackpads. They look a little too low and the D-pad looks pretty funky, so I'm a little skeptical about this one, but it's good to see other manufacturers try trackpads. The Neo Air 1S is going on sale soon. I think they said this is the lightest Windows handheld so far. It's powered by an AMD 7840U. It has a 5.5-inch display, Hall sensor joysticks and triggers, and weighs 450 grams. Neo also has a summer sale going on right now where they're selling various models like the Neo 2 and Neo Air for 20 to 30% off. The Air is actually available now for under $400. I've done reviews on these devices, so I'll leave links in the description if you're interested in that. And finally, there's a new competitor in Orange Pi. This is another handheld with trackpads. They also seem too low on the device to be functionally useful, but hey, what do I know? These should sport either the 7840U or the 6800U. Now let me tell you about some games that got some updates for the Steam Deck, plus some new releases too. So I was looking at Gaming on Linux to learn about the new releases for Proton Up QT and Proton GE, and I saw a couple comments that really caught my eye. First was a comment that was asking about compatibility for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 on the Epic Game Store. This is one game that I've always had trouble running on the Steam Deck, and I've been waiting for an update to get it running, and this thread has people saying they were able to get it work, so I tried it out myself. I'm happy to report that I was able to get THPS 1 and 2 running in desktop mode using Proton Experimental, the latest version, but I still wasn't able to get it to launch in gaming mode. Still though, this is a big W, and I think I can get it to work in gaming mode now with some elbow grease. Next is a little known platformer called Garlic. This is a really great 2D platformer that I've never really mentioned on this channel because I've never seen it being run on the Steam Deck, and I wasn't able to get it to run myself. Thankfully, the comments on Gaming on Linux saved me once again. Shout out to those of you posting on that site, and shout out to Liam. As the comment suggested, I tried Garlic using Proton GE 8-6, and so far it's working perfectly. This has been in my backlog for a while, so I'm really happy to have this available. And if I didn't shout out Gaming on Linux enough in this segment, here's one more for you. The Celico demo got a big update, and this is shaping up to be one of the most deck optimized games I've seen. If you haven't heard of Celico, it's quickly becoming one of the most highly anticipated boomer shooters. It's inspired by fear, and the gameplay is hectic in the best way. In any case, it actually comes with 2 Steam Deck graphical presets, one favoring quality and one favoring performance. Still no release date for this yet, but based on the demos and their updates, I'm super happy with the progress so far. Speaking of shooters inspired by fear, Trepang 2 was recently released and is rated playable for the Steam Deck. The reception is overwhelmingly positive, and it truly looks like a hit. It's gory, it's brutal, and it's a little mystical given your superhuman abilities. My friend High Tech Lowlife has a short video covering this title, but yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into this and letting you all know how it plays. So I released the hidden gems for the Steam Deck video, and there was one game I didn't mention that a lot of you called out. It was the recent release of Dave the Diver. This is another game with an overwhelmingly positive reception. If you don't know, that means over 95% of the Steam reviews are positive. According to the description, it's a casual single-player adventure RPG featuring deep sea exploration and fishing during the day and sushi restaurant management at night. Best of all, it's Steam Deck verified and still on 10% discount for another couple of days. I'll pick it up and maybe you'll see it in my next Steam Deck games you should play video. Another release that's been making the rounds, of course, is Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, which finally made its way onto systems other than the 3DS where it originally released. I've been saying that the Steam Deck is a good home for this considering the original stylus functionality and how that maps to Steam Deck trackpads. According to my friend Mosquito, it also runs well enough at 3 watts TDP cap for that juicy battery life on the Steam Deck. Guilt is a recent release to take a look at. It's a stealth action game with a theme of horror. Apparently it deals with real issues like school bullying. It was previously a Stadia exclusive, and even though it's not deck rated yet, it seems to be a good fit for the handheld. All in all, that's a pretty solid list of games for such a quiet release window here in the beginning of July. If you like hidden gems, don't forget to check out my recent hidden gems video, and let me know what you thought about today's topics, including the Switch 2, Steam Deck being the top seller, the hardware survey, ROG Ally's new issues, and these games that are now made compatible or recently released. Yeah, let me know. Deck Gang out. Goodbye!